The courtroom was full that morning. Rows of wooden benches were lined with people, neighbors, reporters, and strangers who had simply heard that something unusual was about to happen. Some had been waiting for hours, whispering to each other, wondering why this trial felt different from the others. The air was heavy with silence, broken only by the sound of shoes scraping against the floor and the faint creak of old benches. Sunlight filtered through the tall glass windows, but even the light seemed nervous, falling in thin, sharp lines across the polished wooden floor. At the very front, behind the wide desk, sat the judge. She wore her black robe, her hair tied neatly, her face calm but stern. Everyone in the town knew her. She was famous for being fair, strong, and strict. When she entered a room, people stood straighter. When she spoke, no one dared to interrupt. She had the kind of authority that didn't need shouting, but on this day, her eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. Maybe it was the crowd. Maybe it was the strange case on the schedule. Or maybe it was the small boy sitting in the second row. His hands folded, his dark eyes locked on her face, as though she was the only person in the room. He was no more than 11 or 12 years old. His clothes were clean but simple, slightly too big, as though handed down from someone else. His shoes were worn at the edges, and his hair was neatly combed. But there was something about him that caught everyone's attention. He wasn't moving, wasn't fidgeting like most children. He sat perfectly still, his back straight, his small hands resting tightly on his lap. His eyes sharp, deep, and full of something unspoken, never left the judge. People whispered about him. Some said he was here as a witness. Others thought he was related to someone on trial. Few guessed he was just a foster child brought in for questioning. But nobody knew for sure, and the boy gave no answers. He didn't speak, didn't blink. Much. He just stared at the judge as though she carried the secret of his entire life. The bailiff called for order. The murmurs lowered. Papers shuffled. Lawyers prepared their files, and the heavy wooden door at the back closed with a soft thud. The trial was about to begin. The judge lifted her gavel, preparing to start the session. The usual routine was about to unfold. Calling of names, the reading of charges, the careful turning of pages. Everyone expected it to be another ordinary day in court, but then, before a single word left the judge's mouth, the boy stood up. The sound of his small shoes against the floorboards made several heads turn. People frowned, annoyed at the interruption. The bailiff stepped forward, ready to tell him to sit down. Children did not stand in the middle of court without permission, but the boy didn't seem to hear. His eyes were fixed on the judge, burning with a quiet fire. His hands trembled slightly as he raised one arm. His finger pointed straight at the woman in the black robe. And then, in a clear voice that echoed through the courtroom, he said words that froze every heart in the room. "You're my mom." The words hung in the air, heavy and impossible. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Gasps filled the room. People leaned forward. Some covered their mouths in shock. The lawyers froze mid-step, mid-breath. The bailiff's jaw tightened, unsure what to do, and the judge, known for her calm, her control. Her strength suddenly looked like a woman caught in the middle of a storm. Her face drained of color. Her hands, still gripping the gavel, trembled ever so slightly. Her eyes widened. For a heartbeat it seemed she might faint. The silence that followed was unbearable. Even the sound of the clock on the far wall seemed to vanish. No one spoke. No one moved. The boy stood there, his hands still pointing, his voice still echoing in the minds of everyone who heard it. "You're my mom." It wasn't the cry of a confused child. It wasn't a joke or a mistake. His voice carried certainty, a deep truth that couldn't be ignored. The judge swallowed hard, her throat tight. She opened her mouth as though to speak, but no words came. Her eyes flickered confusion, fear, and something else, something softer, something she hadn't shown in years. The crowd leaned closer. Every single person in that room knew they were witnessing something extraordinary, something beyond law and rules. The bailiff whispered urgently, "Ma'am, shall I remove the child?" But the judge lifted her hand slightly, as though even she didn't want him silenced. The boy's small chest rose and fell quickly. His voice broke with emotion as he repeated, softer this time, almost a whisper, "You are my mom." whispers rushed through the courtroom like a wave. Reporters scribbled furiously. Spectators turned to one another, asking the same question. Could it be true? The judge closed her eyes for a moment. She had spent her life in this courtroom, making decisions, giving orders, living by the law. But this moment felt like something else. Not law, not rules, something personal, something dangerous. She opened her eyes again and looked straight at the boy. And for a brief second, her strong mask cracked. Tear shimmered in her eye, though she quickly blinked it away. Order in the court, she finally said, but her voice trembled. The gavel struck once against the desk, but it did nothing to break the spell of silence. Everyone could see it. The boy wasn't lying. The boy wasn't confused. Something deep connected them, something buried, something hidden. And as the judge stared at him, her heart pounded with a secret she thought was lost forever. The question now was not whether the boy had spoken the truth. The question was, what terrible story lay behind those words, and why, after all these years, had it come out here in this courtroom before the eyes of the world? The courtroom had never been so silent. It was as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. The boy's words, simple but sharp, still echoed through the air. You're my mom. The judge's gavel trembled in her hand. She pressed it against the wooden desk, but it did not steady her. Her fingers felt weak, as though the strength that had carried her through years of trials and verdicts had suddenly left her. She was known for her control. Lawyers respected her. Criminals feared her. She had faced liars, manipulators, and men twice her size who tried to intimidate her. But nothing had ever undone her, like the voice of that boy. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. For a moment she simply stared at him, the boy small and fragile, with wide dark eyes that seemed far too old for his young face. His hand was still lifted, though it shook now as if even he feared the weight of what he had said. The crowd's whispers returned, soft but sharp, like buzzing insects. Did he say? He called her, that boy, could it be? Bailiff leaned close to the bench, his voice low but urgent. Ma'am, should I remove the child? This disruption wait, the judge whispered. Her voice was barely audible, but firm enough to stop the bailiff in his tracks. Her eyes locked on the boy again. What did you say? The boy's chin trembled. His voice, though soft, carried across the room. I said, You're my mom. A ripple ran through the crowd. Even the lawyers forgot their papers. One of them, a tall man in a gray suit, whispered, This isn't possible, though his eyes never left the judge's pale face. The judge gripped the edge of her bench so tightly her knuckles whitened. Her heart thudded painfully against her ribs. Memories she had locked away years ago began to rise, memories she had sworn she would never face again. She forced her voice steady. Young man, you cannot make such claims in a courtroom. This is not the place. But her words did not match her face. Her voice carried authority, yet her eyes betrayed fear. She could not stop herself from searching the boy's features. Curve of his jaw, the shape of his nose, the depth of his eyes. Something familiar tugged at her heart, something she had not allowed herself to feel in more than a decade. The boy did not sit down. His hands balled into fists at his sides. Not lying, he said. I know it's you. The judge's breath caught. The words struck her harder than any accusation she had ever heard. Across the room, a woman whispered, How would a boy even know that? Another shook her head. Maybe he's mistaken. But the boy's tone, calm, firm, certain, was not the tone of confusion. It was the tone of truth. The judge swallowed hard, trying to reclaim control. Young man, she said, her voice sharper now, this court will not entertain. And then he reached into his pocket. Slowly, carefully, he pulled out something small, something that caught the light. A necklace. Gasps escaped from the front row. The boy lifted it high enough for the judge to see. The thin chain glimmered faintly. At its center hung a tiny silver charm, scratched and worn from years of being held too tightly. The judge's breath stopped. Her eyes locked on the necklace, and the world fell away. She knew it. She knew it instantly. Her fingers twitched, aching. To touch it, she hadn't seen that necklace in over 11 years. Yet she would have recognized it anywhere. It was hers. It was the necklace she had given to her baby before he was taken. The gavel slipped from her hand, clattering against the desk with a sharp crack that made the crowd jump. Her mask of control shattered. The boy's voice shook, but his words were clear. My real mom gave this to me before I was taken away. The courtroom gasped louder than before. Reporters scribbled furiously. People leaned forward, desperate to see the judge's reaction. Her face turned pale. Her throat worked, but no words came. She felt the ground beneath her feet give way. The first time in years she wasn't Judge Reynolds, the woman of law, wasn't the voice of authority. She was simply a mother, staring at the impossible of the son she had lost. Her heart raced. She wanted to deny it, to call it coincidence, to hide behind the rules of the court. But the necklace gleamed like a truth she could not bury. Memories surged. A hospital room. A tiny baby in her arms. A night filled with fear. The sound of voices telling her it was over, that her child was gone. Her chest ached. She gripped the bench tighter, trying not to collapse. The boy lowered the necklace, holding it against his chest protectively. His eyes glistened with tears. I never forgot you, he whispered. The judge's breath hitched. She had not cried in years, but a tear burned in the corner of her eye. She blinked it away quickly, hoping no one noticed. But the courtroom saw it. Everyone saw it. The whispers grew louder. It's true. The necklace, she knows him. The bailiff stepped forward again, nervous. Ma'am, shall I remove him? The judge shook her head slowly, her voice breaking as she said no. The boy's lawyer finally spoke up, his voice cautious. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. The boy is emotional. Perhaps we can silence, the judge snapped, but her voice cracked halfway. She wasn't commanding anymore. She was breaking. Her gaze returned to the boy. Every second felt like a lifetime. She wanted to stand, to run down from the bench, to hold him in her arms. The weight of her robe, the eyes of the crowd, and the law itself held her prisoner. For years she had lived with discipline. For years she had carried her grief in silence. Now, in one moment, everything she had buried was crashing to the surface. The boy whispered again. It so softly only she seemed to hear. Mom. The word pierced her like a blade and healed her like a prayer all at once. The judge's hand rose slightly, as though reaching for him, but she stopped herself. Her fingers hovered in the air, trembling. Before she clenched them into a fist and lowered them again, she could not show weakness. Not here, not yet. But her heart screamed, and everyone in that courtroom knew. Something powerful, something hidden, had just been revealed. The question now was no longer whether the boy was telling the truth. It was how much longer the judge could keep her secrets locked away. The courtroom buzzed like a hive after the boy's words. No one could sit still. The whispers grew louder, bouncing off the walls, until the bailiff slammed his hand down on the wooden railing. Order, shouted. Order in the court, but the order never came. The silence of before had been broken. The courtroom was alive now, and nothing could tame it. The boy stood quietly in the center, holding his necklace close to his chest. His small face was pale but determined. He had said what he needed to say. He had shown the proof. Now, he simply stood there, waiting. The judge sat frozen on her bench, her knuckles pressed against the wood, her robe heavy on her shoulders. She wanted to speak, but the words would not come. Every time she opened her mouth, her throat tightened. The boy's face was all she could see. His eyes, his voice, the necklace that burned into her memory like fire. Finally, the lawyers broke the tension. One of them, a sharp-faced man in a gray suit, stood abruptly. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. His voice cut through the whispers. Right. This boy cannot be allowed to disrupt the proceedings with wild claims. This is a courtroom, not a stage for personal drama. His words drew some nods from the crowd, but others frowned. Even they had felt the truth in the boy's voice. Another lawyer, a woman with dark hair tied tightly behind her head, rose from her seat. With respect, counselor, she said firmly, that necklace, it is not something ordinary. The judge herself recognized it. We all saw her reaction. Man's face flushed. Coincidence? He snapped. Boy could have found it anywhere. The woman shook her head slowly, her voice low but steady. Children do not invent stories like this without reason. The whispers surged again. Some sided with the man, skeptical, doubtful, afraid of the chaos truth could bring. Others leaned toward the woman, their hearts stirred by the boy's simple courage. The boy looked from one lawyer to the other, then back at the judge. His small voice trembled as he finally spoke. I'm not making this up. I've always known. I never forgot her face. Gasps filled the room again. His words carried weight, heavy and honest. The judge's hand shook as she raised the gavel. She tried to strike it against the bench, but the sound was weak. Her strength was failing. Enough, she said, but her voice cracked. The boy's lawyer, an older man with gentle eyes, stood slowly. His hands trembled as he adjusted his glasses. Your Honor, with permission, may the boy explain himself? At least let the truth be spoken aloud. The courtroom went still. Everyone turned toward the judge. Her lips pressed together tightly. She wanted to say no, to protect herself from the truth that loomed closer with every word. But her eyes betrayed her. She wanted to hear him. She needed to hear him. After a long pause, she whispered, Proceed. The boy's lawyer nodded gently and turned to his client. Go ahead, son. Tell them. The boy swallowed hard. His fingers clutched the necklace until his knuckles turned white. His voice was soft at first, but as he spoke, it grew stronger. I was just a baby when I was taken away, he began. I don't remember much, but I remember her face. He turned toward the judge. Your face? I used to dream about it. I used to wake up crying because I missed it. The judge's eyes burned with tears she could not release. She looked down at her desk, but the boy's words still reached her like arrows. He continued. I grew up in houses that never felt like home. Some people were kind, some were not. But no one ever looked at me the way a mom should. No one held me the way she did. Even if it was only for a little while. The courtroom leaned closer. Every word painted a picture no one could ignore. He lifted the necklace again, holding it up for all to see. This was the only thing I had. A real mom gave it to me before they took me away. I never let go of it. Even when people tried to take it from me, I fought. I held on, because I knew one day it would lead me back to her. The crowd murmured. Some wiped their eyes. Others shook their heads in disbelief. The boy's lawyer asked softly, And what made you certain the judge is your mother? The boy turned fully toward the bench. His voice was steady now. Because I saw her picture once. Years ago, someone had an old newspaper with her face in it. I knew right then. I never forgot. And when I walked into this courtroom, today, I saw her again. My mom. The same face. The judge's heart thundered in her chest. The words clawed at her carefully built walls. She wanted to deny it, to say he was mistaken. But every fiber of her being screamed that it was true. The gray-suited lawyer slammed his hand on the table. This is absurd. A child's fantasy, Your Honor. Surely you can see this is emotional manipulation, but no one believed him. The weight of the boy's truth was stronger than his denial. The woman lawyer turned toward the judge. Your Honor, you felt it too. We all saw it. Are you going to deny what your own heart already knows? The judge's chest rose and fell rapidly. Her fingers gripped the bench so tightly the wood groaned. She wanted to speak, but the words caught in her throat. The boy stepped forward, his eyes wide with tears. Please, he whispered, his voice cracking. Don't say you don't know me. Don't say you don't remember. You are my mom. The courtroom held its breath. The judge looked down at him. And for the first time in years, her eyes filled with tears that would not stay hidden. One slipped down her cheek, glistening under the harsh lights. The entire room gasped. It was not just the boy's story anymore. It was her reaction, and everyone knew the truth was no longer buried. The courtroom was drowning in silence. Everyone's eyes were locked on the judge. The boy's words had filled the air like a thunderclap. The judge's single tear had only deepened the storm. Reporters leaned forward, pens frozen above their notepads. Lawyers exchanged tense glances. Even the bailiff, usually unmoved, stood stiff with unease. But the only two people who seemed to exist in that moment were the boy and the judge. The boy's chest rose and fell with every shaky breath. His necklace dangled from his small fingers, glimmering in the courtroom light. His eyes, pleading, desperate, never left the woman on the bench. And the judge, strong and feared by all, felt as though she was unraveling. She had spent years burying her past, locking it away so deep that not even she dared to open the door. Yet here it was, her past staring at her with wide, tearful eyes. The room waited for her answer. But instead of admitting the truth, the judge straightened her back. She forced her shaking hands to still. Her tear-stained face hardened. The gavel rose and struck the desk with a loud crack that echoed through the hall. "Order," she shouted, her voice breaking halfway. The crowd startled. Whispers died quickly, but the tension did not. The judge's voice trembled, but she fought to keep control. This is a court of law. Will not be distracted by emotional outbursts or false claims. The words sliced through the room, sharp but fragile. The boy flinched as though struck. His lips parted, his eyes wide with shock. "False," he whispered. "I'm not lying." The judge shook her head quickly, almost too quickly. "You are mistaken, young man. I am not your mother. I do not know you." Her denial rang out, but her voice betrayed her. It was too tight, too rushed, too desperate. The boy stepped closer. His small shoes echoed against the polished floor. "But you do," he said softly. His eyes glistened. "You remember me?" "I can see it." The judge looked away, her heart pounding like a drum. She fixed her eyes on her papers, though the words blurred before her. "Bailiff," she said hoarsely, "escort this boy back to his seat." The bailiff hesitated. His eyes flickered between the judge and the child. He had worked under her for years, and never once had he seen her falter. Yet now she looked more fragile than the boy himself. The boy did not move. His lawyer placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, whispering, "Maybe we should," but the boy shook his head fiercely. "No." His voice rose, strong for the first time. "She is my mom. I know it. I won't sit down. Not until she tells the truth." Gasps rippled across the courtroom. Reporters scribbled madly. The judge's chest tightened. Her hand trembled on the bench. She wanted to slam the gavel again, to end this, but her body betrayed her. Her throat was dry. Her vision blurred with tears. "Enough," she whispered. But the word had no weight. The boy's lawyer stepped forward respectfully. "Your Honor, perhaps the boy could explain further? If his claim is false, it will become clear if it is true, and the truth must come out." The judge's eyes snapped toward him, filled with silent fury and fear. She wanted to refuse. She wanted to protect herself from the truth. But deep down, she knew every second she denied it. She looked less like a judge and more like a woman hiding something. The gray-suited lawyer smirked, seizing the moment. "This is absurd. We are wasting the court's time with childish fantasies. I move that this nonsense be stricken from the record immediately." But no one listened. The crowd's hearts were with the boy. Their eyes, their gasps, their tears all testified that something real was happening here. The judge's voice wavered. "Child, I am not who you think I am." The boy stepped closer still, his necklace pressed against his chest. His eyes searched hers, desperate, unrelenting. "Then look at me," he pleaded. "Look at me and say it." The judge froze. She had faced murderers and liars. She had sentenced dangerous men to prison without blinking. But she could not meet the eyes of this boy, because in his face she saw pieces of herself, the curve of his smile, the shape of his jaw, the same eyes that once stared at her from a tiny crib. Her body shook. Her lips moved, but no sound came. The boy's whisper carried through the silence. "Mom, please." The judge pressed her trembling hands against the bench. She wanted to scream that he was wrong, to end this madness, to reclaim her control. But her heart betrayed her. Every beat shouted the truth. She refused to speak. The crowd leaned forward, breathless. Was the judge lying to protect herself? Or Was this truly a mistake? The boy's shoulders sagged. His voice cracked. Why won't you admit it? A tear slid down the judge's cheek, betraying her again. She wiped it away quickly, but the courtroom had seen. Whispers rose louder. She's hiding something. She knows it's true. She can't deny him. The judge slammed the gavel again, her voice rising. Enough. This cannot continue. But the sound of her trembling voice only confirmed what everyone already suspected. The truth was clawing its way out, and no matter how hard the judge tried, denial was slipping through her fingers. The judge's gavel echoed one last time before slipping from her grip. It struck the desk weakly and rolled to the side as if even the wood itself knew her strength was gone. The boy stood firm in the center of the courtroom. His small hands shook, but he did not sit down. His eyes burned with tears, but he did not cry. He clutched the necklace to his chest as though it was his only shield. The crowd leaned closer, breath shallow. No one dared to look away. They knew they were watching the unraveling of something hidden, something sacred. The judge whispered hoarsely, "This must stop." But the boy shook his head. His voice, though trembling, rang out with clarity. "Not until you see this." Slowly, he lifted the necklace higher. The small silver charm dangled, swinging gently in the light. It wasn't just a necklace anymore. It was the key to a locked door, the first crack in the judge's carefully built wall. "Look at it," the boy said, his voice breaking. "You know this isn't just any necklace. You know where it came from." The judge's chest tightened. She tried to avert her eyes, but the charm glimmered, pulling her gaze like a magnet. She remembered it all. Years ago, before the black robe, before the bench, before she was known as Judge Reynolds, she was simply a young mother. The necklace had been hers, a gift. She had placed it gently around her baby's tiny neck, promising it would keep him safe. And then one terrible night he was gone. She had buried that memory under years of work, hiding behind law books and verdicts. But now it had clawed its way back into the light. Her lips trembled. That necklace. It could belong to anyone. Boy's lawyer stepped forward. "With respect, Your Honor, that necklace is not ordinary. There's an inscription." Gaspes ran through the courtroom. Porters leaned in. The boy nodded, his fingers gently turning the charm. "What?" "Yes. There are letters carved inside, faded but still there." "What?" The judge's heart raced. She remembered carving those very letters with shaking hands the night before her baby was taken from her. The initials were hers, and his. Proof that no one else could deny. Show the court. The lawyer urged softly. The boy hesitated, then held the necklace out for the bailiff. The man stepped forward cautiously, as though he too sensed the weight of the moment. He took the necklace, carefully, as if it were glass, and carried it to the judge's bench. The judge's eyes widened as it was placed before her. She stared at it, her hands trembling, afraid to touch. The courtroom held its breath. Finally, she reached out. Her fingers brushed the cool silver. Memories crashed against her laughter, lullabies, the warmth of tiny hands. Tears blurred her vision. She turned the charm over with shaking hands. And there it was, the inscription, 2 letters, small, faint, but still there. Her initials, her breath caught in her throat. She dropped the necklace as though it had burned her. It clattered on the desk, the sound echoing like a hammer striking truth. The boy's voice cracked through the silence. "You see, I told you. You're my mom." The courtroom erupted. Gasps, shouts, whispers filled the air. Some covered their mouths, others clutched their chests. Even the reporters dropped their pens for a moment, stunned into silence. The judge pressed her hands against her face. She couldn't hide it anymore. Her tears flowed freely now, betraying everything she had fought to deny. But still, she tried to resist. "It could be a coincidence," she whispered, though her voice was weak, hollow. The boy stepped closer. His voice was soft, almost pleading. "You know it's not." The woman lawyer rose. "Your Honor, Coincidence cannot explain the necklace, the initials, or the boy's certainty. We all saw your reaction. This is no trick. The gray-suited lawyer slammed his hand down. This is manipulation. A child found an old trinket and decided to... Enough. The judge snapped, her voice breaking with fury and pain. She turned toward him, her eyes blazing through her tears. Do you not see what is happening here? This is no trick. This is... She stopped herself, choking on the words. The boy's whisper finished her sentence. The truth. The judge's breath shuddered. The necklace lay on the desk between them, gleaming with unshakable proof. She stared at the boy, his trembling hands, his pleading eyes, his fragile hope. She saw not just a child, but the very baby she once held. Her heart screamed to stand, to run to him, to hold him again. But her mind, bound by years of duty and fear, kept her chained to the bench. The crowd's whispers grew. It's him. It has to be. She knows. The judge covered her face with her hands, torn apart by the war inside her. For the first time, the courtroom did not see Judge Reynolds, the unshakable force of law. They saw a woman broken, fragile, drowning in the truth she had hidden too. Long the necklace had spoken, and the first proof had been revealed. The necklace still lay on the judge's desk, glimmering under the harsh lights of the courtroom. It was small, delicate, ordinary to anyone else but to her. It was a knife cutting through years of silence. Her hands trembled as she tried to push it away, but her fingers would not let go. Every time she touched the charm, a flood of memories rushed through her mind like waves breaking against a dam she had built long ago. The courtroom blurred. The faces around her became shadows. All she could see was the past. She was no longer Judge Reynolds. She was young, tired, but smiling, holding a baby wrapped in a soft blue blanket. His tiny fingers curled around hers, his eyes blinking up at her with innocence. Remembered whispering to him, promising she would never let him go. Her lips trembled. She could almost hear the soft sound of his laugh. But then came the night that had stolen everything. The sharp cry in the dark, the rushing footsteps, the panic, or the empty crib, her screams tearing through the house. The silence that followed, heavier than death itself. The necklace had been lost with him. She had searched, begged, prayed, but there had been no trace until now. Her breath caught in her chest, and she pressed a trembling hand against her mouth. The boy's voice broke through her haze. Do you remember me now? His question pierced her like a blade. She wanted to shout yes, to run to him, to gather him in her arms. But fear choked her. What if it wasn't true? What if she was wrong? What if hope was lying to her again? Her mind screamed for proof, but her heart already knew. The crowd sat frozen, watching the judge battle ghosts no one else could see. The boy's lawyer whispered to her client, urging him to stay strong, to keep speaking. The boy stepped closer. His hand still shook, but his voice grew steadier. I remember a lullaby, just a little part of it. I hear it in my dreams. It's a soft song. It's about stars. The judge's heart nearly stopped. That lullaby. It was hers. Simple tune she had, made up in the quiet hours, rocking her baby to sleep. A song no one else could possibly know. Her knees weakened. The gavel slipped from her desk and clattered to the floor. Gasps filled the courtroom again. Some of the jurors exchanged shocked glances. Even the bailiff, usually stone-faced, shifted uncomfortably. The judge tried to speak, but her voice cracked. That song? No one knows that song. The boy nodded slowly. His eyes glistened with tears. I do, because you sang it to me. You sang it before I was taken away. Her vision blurred. She could not breathe. The courtroom spun around her, but the boy remained clear, standing like a living piece of her past, demanding to be seen. The opposing lawyer leapt to his feet, his voice sharp, desperate. Objection. This is nonsense, Your Honor. Children. Imagine things. This is a fantasy, nothing more. But no one listened to him, not the jurors, not the spectators, not even the judge, because inside her, the walls she had built were collapsing. Her memories, long buried, rose with violent force. She saw the empty crib again, She heard her own sobs, raw and endless. She felt the crushing silence of years without answers, and now that silence had been broken by the one voice she never thought she'd hear again, the boy's voice. She pressed her hand to her chest. Trembling, the boy's lawyer stepped forward. "Your Honor, these memories, this necklace, the lullaby, they cannot be dismissed as coincidence. This child is not lying. He has lived with this truth in his heart all his life. And now, that truth stands before you." The judge's tears spilled freely. She looked at the boy, her lips trembling. For the first time in years, her strong, controlled mask had shattered completely. The boy whispered again, softer now, almost pleading. "Please, don't push me away. I've been searching for you all my life. I don't want to lose you again." Room fell deathly silent. Every person could feel it, the pull between them, the bond that no distance or time could break. And yet, the judge was trapped. She was torn between her duty as a figure of law and her heart as a mother. She turned away, hiding her face in her hands. The necklace lay heavy before her, shining reminder that truth could no longer be ignored. The bailiff bent slightly, whispering, "Your Honor, are you all right?" But she didn't answer. She couldn't. Her mind was drowning in the haunting weight of memory. For so long, she had buried the pain. She had convinced herself that chapter of her life was over, locked away. But now the lock was broken, the door wide open, and the past had come rushing in with full force. And she realized something terrifying. She could no longer pretend. The boy's truth was real. The necklace proved it. The lullaby sealed it, and deep down, she knew her son had come home. The question was, would she be brave enough to accept it in front of the world? The courtroom had fallen into a strange silence. Everyone waited, watching the judge's pale face, watching the boy's trembling hands. The necklace still lay on the desk, shining like a piece of destiny. The judge wiped her eyes quickly, trying to regain control. But the boy did not sit down. He stood firm, his little shoulders shaking, his lips pressed tight as though holding back years of pain. Finally, his lawyer placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Tell them," she whispered softly. "Tell everyone your story." The boy nodded. He turned to the courtroom, his voice quiet at first, but strong enough to cut through the silence. "I don't remember everything," he said. "I was too small, but I remember being taken away. I remember crying for my mom. I remember holding this necklace and waiting for her to come back." The judge's breath caught. The boy's eyes grew watery, but he didn't stop. "After that, I was passed from house to house, foster homes. People said they would take care of me. Some were kind, but most just wanted money. To them, I wasn't a child. I was a paycheck." Gasps spread through the room. Reporters scribbled furiously. The foster parents sitting in the back shifted uncomfortably, whispering to each other. The boy continued, his voice breaking. "I would sleep in beds that weren't mine, eat at tables where I wasn't wanted. Every time I asked about my real family, they told me to forget, but I couldn't. I couldn't forget you," he pointed again. This time, not with anger, but with a desperate kind of love. "I couldn't forget my mom." The judge's lips trembled. Her hand clutched at her robe, pressing against her chest as though holding her breaking heart inside. The boy took a shaky breath. "Some nights, when it was too hard, I sang the lullaby. The same one you used to sing to me? I didn't know where it came from, but I knew it was yours. It was the only thing that kept me alive." Tears ran down his cheeks now. His words pierced the hearts of everyone listening. Few jurors wiped their eyes, even one of the reporters lowered his pen, his vision blurred by tears. The opposing lawyer tried to rise, but the crowd glared at him. Even he could feel the weight of truth crushing the air. He sank back into his chair, defeated for now. The boy looked down at the necklace again, squeezing it tightly in his hand. "Every time I was hurt, I held it. Every time I was hungry, or scared or lonely, I told myself, one day I'll find her. One day she'll see this necklace and know I'm hers." The courtroom was still, so quiet that even the sound of the boy's sniffles seemed to echo. The judge's eyes blurred with tears. Her memories twisted together with his words, matching. Piece for piece. The necklace, the lullaby. The eyes dot, and now, the story of suffering. The years he had endured while she believed he was gone forever. The guilt was unbearable. She had built a fortress of law, of order, of discipline to hide her brokenness. But that fortress had done nothing to protect her son. He had been out there, suffering, waiting for her while she sat in robes of power. Blind to his pain, her lips moved, but no sound came out. She wanted to speak, to apologize, to scream. But her voice betrayed her. The boy's lawyer spoke for him, Your Honor. This child has lived through pain that no child should ever know. He has carried this truth in silence, waiting for this day. His story is not a fantasy. It is his life. The boy wiped his tears with the back of his hand. I don't care about money. I don't care about courts. I just want my mom. The words fell heavy in the room, heavier than any verdict the judge had ever given. The judge lowered her head into her hands. For years, she had silenced her heart. For years, she had buried her pain under rules and laws. But nothing could silence a child's truth. Nothing could bury a bond between mother and son. The bailiff's voice cracked as he whispered, Your Honor, what do you want to do? But the judge didn't answer. She couldn't. Her heart was in war with her duty. The boy's story still echoed in her mind lonely nights. Empty tables, broken promises, and all of it because fate had stolen him away. The judge's tears fell onto the desk. She tried to brush them away, but more came, unstoppable, like a river breaking free. The courtroom sat in awe, watching a woman once seen as unshakable crumble under the weight of truth, and her boy stood in the middle of it all, clutching the necklace, waiting for her to admit what her heart already knew. For him, this was not just a case. This was his life, his chance to finally be seen, to finally belong, to finally have his mother back. The judge lifted her head slowly. Her eyes, red with tears, locked on the boy. Her lips trembled, but her heart whispered the words she still could not say aloud. My son, the boy's story had been told. And now, the world would never be the same. The boy's final words, I just want my mom, hung heavy in the air, echoing in every corner of the courtroom. For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody dared to even breathe too loudly. The reporters sat frozen, their pens still. The jurors lowered their eyes, unsure if they should be watching this private storm unfold. Even the bailiff, trained to keep order, simply stood in silence. And at the center of it all was Judge Reynolds. Her hands gripped the edge of her bench so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Her chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths. She tried to blink back the flood of tears, but it was no use. The dam inside her had cracked, and the memories, the guilt, the love she had buried for so long now surged forward like a raging river. She had faced dangerous criminals. She had passed judgments in cases that shook the city. She had worn her robe-like armor, her gavel like a sword. Not now, none of that mattered. She was not the powerful Judge Reynolds anymore. She was just a mother. A broken mother standing face to face with the child she thought she had lost forever. The necklace glimmered on the desk. Its presence was unbearable. Every glance at it pulled her deeper into the past. 2 nights of sorrow, prayers whispered into the darkness. In mornings when she forced herself to rise, pretending she was strong, her body trembled. She pressed a hand against her mouth. As if holding back a scream, the boy's small figure blurred through her tears. His eyes, those same eyes she once looked into when he was a baby, now stared back at her with pain, hope, and desperate longing. She whispered to herself. Though the microphone caught it and the whole courtroom heard, this cannot be real. It cannot, but it is. Gasps spread again. The jurors exchanged glances. The reporters scribbled furiously. The opposing lawyer shot to his feet, desperate to break the moment. Your Honor, he shouted, this is highly irregular. Is emotional manipulation? You must dismiss these claims before this circus destroys the dignity of this court. But no one listened to him. Not even the judge. Her mind was far away. Drowning in memories, she saw herself younger, cradling her baby in a rocking chair, singing the lullaby softly as moonlight streamed through the window. She smelled his baby blanket, heard his giggles, felt his small fingers tugging at her hair. Then she saw the nightmare again the night he was gone. The crib empty, her screams echoing through the house. The hopeless search. The police reports. The endless nights when she curled up on the floor, clutching the necklace she once wore, begging God for one more chance. And now here he was. Not in a dream, not in memory, but here, alive, calling her mom. Her chest heaved. A sob tore through her lips before she could stop it. The courtroom froze. They had never seen Judge Reynolds like this. This was the woman known for her iron discipline, the one who never flinched, never broke, never showed weakness. And now, before their eyes, she was crumbling. The bailiff took a cautious step forward. "Your Honor, perhaps we should take a recess." "No." The word burst from her, sharp and broken. She slammed her hand on the desk, but her strength faltered. "No, no recess, no running away. Not this time." Her voice cracked and tears rolled down her cheeks openly now. The boy's lawyer spoke softly, almost like a whisper of encouragement. "Your Honor, no one here sees weakness. What we see is the truth." The judge's lips trembled. She lowered her face into her hands and shook her head. "I cannot do this. I cannot." The boy took a hesitant step forward. His small voice broke the silence. "Yes, you can." Those 3 words hit harder than any gavel. It pulled her from the pit of fear. "Shh." She lowered her hands slowly. Her tear-stained face revealed to the court. Everyone could see it now, the struggle, the love, the unbearable weight she carried. The boy clutched the necklace tightly, holding it against his heart. "I waited for you. I dreamed about you. Don't push me away now." The silence in the courtroom was thick, heavy, but sacred. It felt as if even the walls were holding their breath. The opposing lawyer tried again, his voice angry, shaking. "This has gone too far. We cannot let enough." "Right," the judge shouted, her voice fierce but broken. She pointed a trembling hand toward him. "Sit down. You will not silence him. You will not silence me." The lawyer froze. He had seen her angry before, but this was different. This was not the anger of a judge. This was the fury of a mother who had been denied her child. Her voice softened as she turned back to the boy. "Why now? Why here? Why?" After all these years, the boy swallowed hard. His voice wavered, but his words were clear. "Because I finally found the truth. Because I finally found you. I couldn't wait one more day." The judge pressed her hand against her chest. Her robe, once a symbol of power, now felt like a prison. She wanted to rip it off, to run to him, to hold him. But she was still chained by fear of being wrong. Fear of breaking the walls she had lived behind for so long. The jury sat silent. The audience sat silent. The entire courtroom had become a stage for something greater than law, something deeper than justice. And in that silence, the judge broke. Tears poured down her face. Her body trembled. Her voice came out as a whisper, but it was enough to make the entire room gasp. "I remember you." The boy's knees buckled. He almost fell, but his lawyer steadied him. His lips trembled, his whole body shaking with a mix of joy and grief. The judge leaned forward, her tears dripping onto the desk. "I remember you, the way you laughed, the way you looked at me with those same eyes. My baby." The boy's lips parted. His voice cracked. "Mom," the word hung in the air, fragile yet powerful, and every soul in that room felt the weight of it. The court had fallen silent. And in that silence, a mother and son found each other again, though the world was not yet ready for what came next. The words still echoed through the courtroom, "Mom." For a moment, it felt like the entire world had stopped spinning. Judge sat trembling behind her desk, tears streaming down her face. No longer the powerful figure of law, but a mother rediscovering her lost child. The boy stood below, clutching the necklace against his chest, his lips trembling, his eyes overflowing. But then the silence shattered. A loud, panicked voice cut through the air. "This is ridiculous. This is a lie." Everyone turned sharply. It was the foster mother, rising from the back row with her husband gripping her arm. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear. She pointed at the boy, her hand shaking. "He doesn't know what he's saying," she shouted. "He's confused. He's been troubled since the day we took him in. He makes up stories, he always has." Gasps filled the room. Reporters' pens scratched furiously against their notepads. The jurors exchanged sharp looks. The boy's face fell. His lips quivered as though someone had struck him. "That's not true," he whispered, his voice breaking. The foster father stood too, his voice louder, angrier. "This whole thing is madness. He's trying to destroy us. He's ungrateful. We gave him food, we gave him shelter, and this is how he repays us." The boy's lawyer quickly stepped forward. "Your Honor, please, these people have silenced him long enough. Let him speak his truth." But the foster mother cut her off, almost screaming now. "Truth? He doesn't know the meaning of truth. He's just a child. He's lying to manipulate you. Look at him. Look at how he twists things to get attention." Boy covered his face with his hands, not from anger, but from hurt. Each word from them sliced into him like a knife. The judge's chest heaved as she gripped the bench tightly. Her eyes burned with fury, but also with sorrow. She turned toward the foster parents, her voice trembling but sharp. "Enough, sit down." But they refused. The foster father slammed his hand against the wooden rail. "No, we will not sit down while this fantasy ruins our lives. We raised him. He belongs to us, not to some broken memory you think you have." The judge rose. To her feet, for the first time in her career, she shook not with weakness, but with a storm of anger and heartbreak colliding inside her. Her voice thundered through the room. "Belongs to you. A child is not property. He's not something you own. He is not your possession." The courtroom erupted in whispers. Some jurors nodded in agreement, others simply stared in disbelief. The boy lowered his hands, tears streaking. His cheeks, his small voice trembled, but carried through the silence. "You always knew." The foster parents froze. The boy's fists clenched. His voice grew stronger, though it cracked with pain. "You always knew I wasn't yours. You knew I had a mother out there. You knew this necklace wasn't from you, but you never told me the truth, kept me away from her." The foster mother shook her head wildly. No, that's not true. We just wanted to protect you." "Protect me?" the boy shouted suddenly, his small body trembling with rage and grief. "Protects me from what? From my mom? The one person who actually loved me? He didn't protect me, you kept me from her." His cry rang through the courtroom, leaving even the toughest officer in the back blinking hard to fight tears. The judge's face crumbled. Each word from the boy was another crack in her heart. She clutched the edge of the bench as though to keep herself standing. The boy's lawyer stepped forward again, her voice steady but sharp. "Your Honor, I think it's clear what's happening here. These foster parents are not defending the truth. They're defending their lies. They've silenced this child for years, and now that the truth is coming out, they're desperate to bury it again." The foster father turned red, his fists clenched at his sides. "You don't know what you're talking about. We cared for him when nobody else would." The boy's lawyer didn't flinch. "No, you profited from him when nobody else was watching." The foster mother gasped, her hand flying to her chest. The audience erupted in whispers, louder this time, angrier. Some heads shook in disgust. Others leaned forward, eager to see what would come next. The boy's voice cracked again. I begged you to tell me who I really was. Every time you told me to forget. You said I didn't have a mother. You lied." The judge's tears fell harder. She gripped the necklace on her desk, holding it tightly as if it could anchor her to the truth. The foster parents tried one last time, their voices desperate now. "He doesn't understand. He's just a child. He doesn't know what's real and what's not." But the judge finally found her strength. Her voice rang out, cutting through their lies. "He knows. He knows more than any of us. And you. will not silence him again. The foster parents froze. The power in her voice was undeniable. The boy looked up at her, his tears still flowing, but now there was hope in his eyes. For the first time, someone had defended him. For the first time, someone had stopped the voices that told him he was nothing, and that someone was his mother. The courtroom sat still, the tension thick. The truth had been spoken, but the fight was far from over. The foster parents' denial had only revealed how much they had to hide. The storm had only just begun. The courtroom was no longer quiet. Whispers filled the air, like restless winds before a storm. Everyone's eyes moved back and forth between the boy, the trembling judge, the foster parents who were standing red-faced, their voices sharp and desperate. The judge raised her hand to silence the room. Slowly the noise died down. Her lips trembled as she looked at the boy. He stood small and fragile in the middle of the courtroom, his tiny fists clenched, his chest rising and falling with uneven breaths. His eyes glistened with both pain and courage. The judge spoke softly, though her voice shook. "Son,
Tell
us. Tell us what you mean." The boy swallowed hard. He clutched the necklace tighter, feeling the cool metal in his palm. His voice wavered at first, but then grew stronger, as if every word was pulling years of secrets out of his heart. "They lead to me," he whispered. "My foster parents lied to me all my life." Gasps ran across the room. The foster mother shook her head violently. No, that's not true," she cried, her voice shrill with panic. "He doesn't know what he's saying. He's confused." He raised his head, his eyes burning with truth. "I asked them, over and over again. I asked them who I was, where I came from, why I didn't look like them, why I felt different. And every time, they told me to forget. They said I had no one. They said my mother didn't exist." The judge's face crumpled, her hand flying. To her mouth, tears welled in her eyes again. The boy's words cut deeper. But I knew, deep inside me, I knew they were hiding something. Every time I found a clue, they took it away. Every time I asked too much, they punished me. They didn't want me to know the truth. The foster father's voice exploded across the courtroom. "Lies, all lies. We never stop." The boy cried out, his voice trembling but powerful. His small frame shook as he faced them. "Don't you dare say it again. You lied. You told me I was nothing. You told me I had no one. But I do. I had her. I had my mom. And you kept her away from me?" The words struck the foster parents like thunder. The mother covered her face, while the father glared with clenched fists. The courtroom buzzed with whispers. Reporters scribbled. Frantically, jurors exchanged shocked glances. Even the security guard at the door looked shaken. The boy took a shaky step forward. His voice grew quieter, almost breaking, but the silence in the room carried every word. "You hid my birth papers, hid the necklace. You hid every letter from her. You told me she never cared, but she did. She looked for me. She loved me. And you knew it." The foster mother cried out, her voice sharp. "That's not true. We only wanted what was best for you." The boy's lips trembled, his tears falling again. "Best for me? Best for me was knowing the truth. Best for me was having my mom, but you wanted what was best for you. You wanted the money. You wanted control. You wanted to keep me quiet." The judge's knuckles turned white as she gripped the bench. Her heart shattered at each word, but she forced herself to stay strong. She had to let the boy speak. Had to let the truth pour out, no matter how much it broke her inside. The boy's lawyer finally stepped forward, her voice sharp but steady. "Your Honor, this child is not confused. He is brave. He has lived years of silence under people who feared the truth. What he says now is not fantasy, is testimony. And it must be heard." The foster father slammed his hand against the railing, his face red with fury. "We fed him. We clothed him. Without us, he would have had nothing." The boy flinched, but then raised his head. His reply was quiet, but it silenced the entire courtroom. "I would rather have had nothing than to live without my mom." The room froze. Even the reporters paused, their pens hanging in midair. The judge's tears fell openly now. her hand clutching the necklace so tightly it left marks in her skin. The foster mother staggered back, her mouth opening but no words coming out. The boy's truth had crushed every excuse they had. The boy wiped his tears roughly and continued, his voice trembling but brave. "You didn't protect me. You didn't love me. You only loved the life you built around me. And you were afraid. Afraid that one day I'd remember. Afraid that one day I'd find her. Afraid that one day I'd speak the truth in front of everyone.
Oh.
And now I have." The foster father's face went pale. He turned to his wife, but she avoided his eyes, her own guilt spilling over. The courtroom buzzed louder now. But this time, it wasn't whispers of doubt. It was murmurs of anger. People shook their heads. Some jurors looked disgusted. A woman in the back row wiped her eyes. The judge lifted her hand for silence again, though her own heart was breaking apart. She looked at the boy, her lips trembling. "You're saying, they kept you from me?" The boy nodded slowly, his eyes locked on hers, soft but filled with pain. "Yes, they told me you didn't exist. But you did. You always did." The judge's knees almost gave way. She clutched the bench to keep herself standing. Her tears blurred her vision, but she refused to look away from her son. The boy stepped forward again, holding up the necklace. "This was yours. This was proof. They tried to hide it too, but I found it. And when I saw you, I knew you were the one I'd been searching for." The judge broke. She covered her mouth, sobbing quietly, her whole body trembling. The courtroom was silent again, but this silence was heavier than before. It wasn't the silence of confusion, it was the silence of truth sinking. Deep into every heart in the room, the boy had accused them, and his words rang with a power no one could deny. The foster parents stood frozen, cornered by the truth they had hidden for years. The judge whispered, her voice shaking, her tears unstoppable. "My son, after all these years." And in that moment, the entire courtroom knew the lies had begun to crumble. But the battle was not over. The foster parents would not give up easily. And what came next would decide everything. The storm was still raging. The boy's last words still echoed in the air. "I would rather have had nothing than to live without my mom." The courtroom sat frozen. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed too loudly. The reporters, who had been scribbling furiously minutes ago, stopped mid-sentence, their pens hovering above paper. Jurors stared, wide-eyed, unable to process what they had just heard. And the judge. The judge was trembling. Her fingers dug into the wooden bench. Her chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. Tears blurred her vision, but her eyes never left the boy. He stood small in the center of the room, but his truth carried more weight than anything she had heard in her years of law. Slowly, she straightened her back. She wiped her face quickly, trying to hide the cracks in her strength. Then her voice, though soft and trembling, rang across the courtroom. "Enough." Everyone stilled. The word was not shouted, but it carried power. The judge leaned forward, her eyes moving from the boy to the foster parents. Her hands shook slightly, but her tone grew firmer. "We cannot move forward on emotion alone. If this claim is true. If what this boy says is true, then we need evidence. We need proof." The foster parents stiffened. Their faces lost all color. The boy's lawyer stepped forward, nodding quickly. "Your Honor, we have reason to believe documents and files were deliberately hidden. There may be records, letters, perhaps even adoption papers that were never filed properly. This child has carried the truth in his heart, but the proof is still out there." The foster father's voice exploded in panic. "This is outrageous! You can't just drag us through the mud because of some child's story." The foster mother grabbed his arm, whispering frantically, but he yanked it away. His face was red, his anger uncontrollable. "We raised him. We gave him a home. And now you're turning against us because he tells a bedtime story about a mother he never had." The boy's voice trembled, but carried through the silence. "I had her. I always had her." The judge slammed her gavel once. The sharp crack silenced the room. Her voice shook, but remained firm. "This is a courtroom. And in this courtroom, we deal with truth. If there is evidence to be found, then it will be found. And if lies have been told, they will be exposed. The foster parents shifted nervously, their eyes darting. The courtroom buzzed again with whispers. One juror leaned toward another and whispered, "They're scared." The boy's lawyer took a step closer. "Your Honor, I request immediate access to the foster care records. I believe the files will show inconsistencies. I also request an official search for any personal belongings taken from the child when he entered their custody." The judge nodded slowly, her hand shaking as she wrote notes. "Granted, the records will be examined." Foster mother suddenly cried out, her voice desperate. "No, that's private. Those files are ours." The judge's head snapped toward her, her voice sharp now. "They are not yours. They belong to this child. They always did." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The foster mother sank in two, her seat, her face pale. The boy's lawyer looked back at the child and gave him a small, encouraging nod. The boy held the necklace tighter, his heart pounding. He had spoken his truth, but now the proof had to follow. The tension thickened. Every person in the room could feel it the moment before something broke, the moment before the storm unleashed its full power. The judge leaned back, her voice quieter now, but heavy with weight. "We will not decide this on words alone. We will find the truth. Until then, no one leaves. This court is in recess, but we remain under strict order. Evidence will be brought forward." The bailiff stepped closer, standing tall, his eyes locked on the foster parents. They shifted uncomfortably. Their hands clasped tightly, as though holding on to each other was the only thing keeping them upright. The boy glanced at them, then back at the judge.
"Right,"
his small voice whispered, just loud enough for everyone to hear. "They're afraid, because they know the truth is coming." The words spread through the courtroom like fire. Reporters scribbled again, the sound of pens scratching filling the silence. Jurors exchanged knowing glances. People in the audience shook their heads, some muttering under their breath. The judge gripped the necklace on her desk again, staring at it for a long moment. Her tears had dried, but her heart still shook. She whispered softly, so quietly that only she could hear. "After all these years, could it really be him?" The boy watched her, his eyes wide with both fear and hope. He didn't know what would happen next, but for the first time, he believed the truth might finally win. The recess bell rang. Officers moved through the room. People stood slowly, their whispers growing louder, but no one left quickly. No one wanted to miss what would come next. The truth was circling the room like a predator, ready to strike, and the foster parents knew. Their lives were running out of time. The courtroom doors creaked as people slowly returned after recess. The atmosphere had changed. Before, there was shock and disbelief. Now there was something heavier expectation. Everyone knew the next moments could change everything. The boy sat at the front with his lawyer. His small hands clutched the necklace so tightly that the edges pressed into his palm. Kept glancing at the judge. She sat tall behind the bench, but her eyes were red, her face pale. She looked like a woman holding back a storm inside her heart. The foster parents entered together. The mother's eyes darted nervously around the room as though the walls themselves might accuse her. The father's jaw was tight, his steps sharp, his fists clenched. He looked angry, but underneath his anger was fear. Everyone could see it. The bailiff announced, "Court is back in session." The judge lifted her gavel but didn't strike it yet. Her voice trembled as she spoke. During the recess, a request was made to review the child's foster care files. Those files have been retrieved. The room shifted. People leaned forward. Reporters lifted their pens. Jurors sat straighter. The judge nodded toward a clerk. The clerk stepped forward with a thick brown folder. The edges were worn, the papers inside uneven. The judge's hand shook as she reached for it, her fingers brushing the surface as though touching something sacred. Slowly, she opened the folder. The first page was a standard form name, age, placement date. But something was strange. The boy's birth date had been crossed out once, rewritten in smaller handwriting. The judge frowned. The boy's lawyer spoke quickly. "Your Honor, notice how the date has been altered. That is illegal." Someone tampered with this record. Gasps echoed through the room. The foster father slammed his hand on the table. That doesn't mean anything. It's just a clerical error. But his voice sounded less certain this time. The judge turned the page. Inside was a short summary of the boy's background. But there was a line blacked out with thick ink. She narrowed her eyes. This section has been deliberately redacted. The clerk leaned forward, his voice respectful. Your Honor, that redaction wasn't authorized by the court. These files should never have been altered. The foster mother's hands trembled. She gripped her husband's arm, whispering something frantically. He pulled away. The boy's lawyer stood taller. Your Honor, I request that this blacked-out section be restored by forensic examination. There could be names, family details, anything. That proves his connection. The judge nodded, her heart pounding. She turned another page. This time, a small envelope slipped out and fell onto the desk. Everyone gasped softly. The judge froze. Her hand shook as she picked it up. The paper was old, yellowed at the edges. She opened it slowly. Inside was a letter. Her breath caught. The handwriting. She knew it instantly. Her hand went to her mouth as her eyes scanned the words. To whoever finds this child, please keep him safe. His name is Michael. Mother who loves him. Please do not let him forget me. L. The judge's knees almost buckled. She pressed the letter against her chest, her tears spilling freely now. She whispered the name brokenly. Michael. No? The boy's head shot up. His small body trembled. That's my name, he whispered. That's my real name. The courtroom exploded in gasps. Reporters scribbled furiously. Jurors leaned forward, their mouths open. The foster mother shook her head violently. No, that doesn't mean anything. It's just some scrap of paper. The boy cut her off, his voice breaking. It's her handwriting. I've seen it before. On the back of the necklace, the same curves, the same letters. I told you I knew. The judge turned the necklace over in her hand. On the back, faintly scratched, were the letters LM. Her tears fell harder. It matches, she whispered. It's mine. The courtroom went silent again, but this silence was electric. The foster father tried one last time, his voice desperate. This is all coincidence. You can't trust a child's memory. It's just the judge's gavel slammed down. Sound cracked through the air like lightning. Silence, she thundered, her voice no longer trembling but fierce. This is no coincidence. This is the truth. The truth has been hidden for far too long. The boy's knees gave way. Fell into his chair, his tiny shoulders shaking with sobs. His lawyer placed a comforting hand on his back. The judge held the letter tightly, her tears dripping onto the paper. For years she had lived with a hole in her heart. For years she had wondered, searched, prayed, and now the proof was in her hands. Her son had been with her all along, just hidden behind lies. The courtroom sat in stunned silence. People knew this was only the beginning. The records had started to crack open. More secrets were waiting to be revealed. And the foster parents knew. Their carefully built walls were about to collapse completely. The storm was no longer coming. It was here. The judge's gavel still echoed through the room. But the courtroom itself was silent. Silent, except for the sound of a boy's quiet sobs. And the faint scratch of reporters' pens racing to capture every word. The letter sat on the judge's desk, trembling in her hand. She held it close, as though it were more precious than anything she had ever touched. The words written years ago now burned through her heart. His name is Michael. He has a mother who loves him. The foster parents sat stiffly at their table. The foster mother's hands trembled, twisting the edge of her scarf. The foster father's face was red, his jaw clenched so tight the muscles twitched. But it was too late. The courtroom had already seen enough. A juror whispered loudly to another. They knew. Someone in the audience hissed, "How could they do this to a child?" The whispers grew louder and louder until the whole room buzzed with anger. The boy sat small in his chair, clutching the necklace. His eyes, wet with tears, moved to the judge, his mother, and for the first time, he didn't look afraid. He looked hopeful. The boy's lawyer rose, her voice calm but cutting. Your Honor, this letter proves that the child's mother never abandoned him. It proves she loved him and wanted him safe. And yet, for years, the foster parents kept this letter hidden. They silenced him, they erased his identity, and they lied to him about the one person he longed for most. The courtroom gasped again. The foster father slammed his fist on the table. Not true. We did what was necessary to protect him. Protect him. The lawyer shot back, her voice rising. Or protect yourselves. From losing the money. From losing control. From losing the lie you built. Murmurs of agreement spread through the audience. Someone in the back shouted, "Shame on you." The foster mother shook her head violently. No, we gave him a life. We gave him everything he needed. The boy suddenly stood, his small voice cutting through the noise. No, you didn't. The room froze. His hands shook, but his words were steady. You gave me food. You gave me clothes. But you never gave me love. You gave me lies. Every time I asked about my mom, you said she didn't want me. You told me I was unwanted. But I wasn't. I had her. I always had her. His voice cracked, and tears streamed down his face. You didn't give me everything. You took everything away. The room erupted. Gasps, murmurs, angry whispers filled every corner. People shook their heads in disbelief. Jurors stared at the foster parents with hard, cold eyes. Even the bailiff shifted uncomfortably, his hand resting near his badge as if guarding against something ugly. The judge's tears spilled over again. But she didn't hide them. She let them fall. She wanted her son to see her cry, to see that his pain was her pain. The foster father's voice faltered now. He looked around the courtroom, but everywhere he turned, he saw nothing but anger and judgment. You don't understand, he muttered. You don't know what it was like. The boy's lawyer stepped closer to the bench. Oh, Mr. Harris, you don't understand. You don't understand what it means to care for a child. You don't understand what love is. You only understand power and control. And now the truth has taken both away from you. The foster mother broke down, covering her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook, her sobs muffled. The foster father tried to speak again, but the judge slammed her gavel. Enough. Voice boomed, shaking with both fury and heartbreak. She rose from her chair, her eyes burning with tears. I have heard all I need to hear. This court is no longer questioning whether lies were told. We're questioning how deep those lies go. The audience burst into whispers again. Reporters scribbled faster than ever. The boy looked up at her, his small voice whispering, Mom. Word broke her completely. She pressed the letter against her chest and whispered, Yes, my son. I'm here. I'm finally here. The foster parents looked defeated now. The mother sobbed openly, while the father sat stiff and pale, his jaw no longer tight but slack with fear. The entire courtroom had turned against them. The jurors whispered among themselves, their faces grim. One by one, they looked toward the boy with sympathy and toward the foster parents with anger. The bailiff stepped closer to the foster parents. Everyone could feel it, the shift. The courtroom had chosen a side. The storm of truth had torn down the walls of lies. And now the foster parents were standing in the open, exposed. The judge lifted her gavel again, her voice steady but heavy. With emotion, this case is no longer about custody. This case is about justice, and justice will be served. The boy's tears flowed, but he smiled faintly through them. For the first time in his life, the world was on his side, and the foster parents knew there was no escape. The courtroom had turned against them completely. The end game was coming. The courtroom air felt heavy. It's almost too thick to breathe. Every person in the room leaned forward, waiting for what would come next. The boy had spoken. The judge's mother had admitted the truth. The foster parents sat broken, surrounded by whispers of anger, but still, something felt unfinished. The boy's lawyer adjusted her papers and looked directly at the foster parents. We've seen the letter. We've heard the child. We've heard the lies, but this court still deserves to know one thing. Why? Her voice echoed, cutting through the silence. Why did you hide this child's mother from him? Why did you keep her away all these years? The foster mother shook her head, her hands trembling. We thought it was best. He didn't need to know. He was better off not knowing. He's better off without his own mother, the lawyer pressed. Better off believing he was unwanted? Better off living in lies? The woman sobbed. You don't understand. She wasn't supposed to find him. She wasn't supposed to know. The entire room gasped. The judge's face went pale again. Do you mean? The lawyer asked sharply. The foster father finally spoke, his voice low and bitter. Because she was never supposed to be a mother. Not after what happened. What? The boy's eyes widened. He looked from the man to the judge, confused. And scared? What? What do you mean? The judge gripped the bench, her knuckles white. Her lips trembled. The lawyer narrowed her eyes. Tell the court exactly what you're accusing her of. The foster father's voice grew louder, desperate. She gave him up. She signed the papers. She didn't want him lies. Judge's voice thundered, louder than the gavel. The entire courtroom jumped. She stood, trembling with fury. Tears ran down her face, but her eyes burned with truth. I never gave him up. I never signed any papers. They were forged. They were stolen. I searched for him every day of my life. And when I was told he was gone, I thought I had lost him forever. The boy's heart raced. He could barely breathe. Mom, is that true? She nodded, her face crumbling. Yes, my son. Never left you. They took you from me. The courtroom gasped again. Porters scribbled frantically, pens nearly tearing through their notepads. The lawyer stepped closer to the foster parents. So it's true then. You didn't just hide him. You stole him. Silenced his mother and you silenced him. Foster mother broke down completely. We were told it was the only way to keep him safe. Safe? The lawyer demanded. From what? The woman sobbed harder. Her words came out choked, broken, from her enemies. From people who wanted her destroyed. All eyes turned to the judge. The boy looked up at her, confused. Mom, what enemies? Judge closed her eyes for a moment, as though reliving years of buried pain. When she opened them, her voice was quiet but clear. When I was younger, I fought for people who had no voice, took dangerous cases, stood against powerful men who thought they could buy justice, men who thought the law was theirs. To control, I made enemies. And when I had you, Michael, they threatened us both. The courtroom went silent. I was told, she continued, that giving you up would keep you safe. But I never agreed. I fought. I fought with everything I had. And then, one day you were gone, stolen, hidden from me. And I was told you had been placed with a family. I searched for you. I begged for you. But every door was slammed in my face. Every file was gone. Every lead disappeared. She looked at the foster parents, her tears sharp with anger. Until I found this letter. Until today. The boy clutched his necklace tighter, his chest rising and falling in quick breaths. All this time, you were looking for me? Judge's voice cracked. Every single day. The audience gasped again, some wiping away their own tears. The jurors sat stunned, their eyes wet, their hands covering their mouths. The boy stepped forward, closer to the bench, his voice trembling. Then why didn't they tell me? Why didn't they let me see you? The foster father's mask, finally, cracked. His voice came out bitter and cold. Because he wasn't supposed to belong to you, he was ours. After everything we gave, everything we sacrificed, he was ours. The boy shouted back, his small body shaking with fury. I'm not. Yours? I was never yours. The room erupted in gasps. The foster father's face twisted with rage, but there was no strength left in him. The truth had shattered his defenses. The lawyer slammed her hand on the table. Your Honor, it is clear now. This is no longer a simple custody case. This is theft. This is fraud. This is the destruction of a child's life for selfish gain. The foster mother collapsed into her chair, sobbing uncontrollably. The foster father sat stiff, his jaw slack, eyes darting desperately around the room, as though searching for an escape. but there was none. The truth was out. The judge gripped her, gavel tightly, her voice trembling with emotion. For years, lies have ruled this child's life. But today the truth has found him. Today he knows who his mother is. And today this court will see justice done. The boy looked up at her, his eyes shining with tears but filled with hope. For the first time, the lies were gone. For the first time, he saw the whole truth. The foster parents sat defeated, the audience's anger burning against them. The boy and his mother, separated by lies and time, were finally standing together in truth. The final secrets had been revealed. And now, only judgment remained. The courtroom was silent again, but it wasn't the same silence as before. It was heavy. It was sharp. It was the kind of silence that meant something unforgettable was about to happen. The boy sat at the center of it all, his small hands still, clutched the necklace tightly, his eyes red from tears but burning with hope. He had spoken his truth. Mother had spoken hers. The lies had been pulled apart piece by piece, and now only judgment remained. The jurors exchanged glances there, faces grave. Reporters leaned so far forward their pens hovered in the air. The audience sat still, many wiping their eyes, waiting for the moment that would decide everything. The boy's lawyer stood. Her voice was strong, steady, and full of fire. "Your Honor, this is no longer about who has custody. This is about right and wrong. This is about a child who was stolen, silenced, and broken by lies. And it is about a mother who never stopped fighting for him. The foster parents hid the truth. They buried it for years. They do not deserve this boy. He belongs with his mother." The audience nodded, murmurs of agreement spreading. The foster father jumped up, his voice full of rage and desperation. "You can't do this. We raised him. We fed him. We clothed him. He's ours." The judge slammed her gavel so hard that sound cracked through the room like thunder. "Sit down," she shouted. The man froze. His wife sobbed beside him, her face buried in her hands. The judge's voice shook as she continued. "You fed him. You clothed him. But you poisoned his soul with lies. You told him he was unwanted, when the truth was that his mother loved him all along. That is not raising a child, it is destroying one." The boy's tears streamed again, but this time they were tears of relief. For the first time, someone was saying the words he had waited to hear his whole life. The jurors whispered again, their faces softening as they looked at the boy. The tide of justice was clear. The judge set the gavel down, her hand trembling. She stood slowly, her black robe flowing heavily around her, and looked straight at her son. Her voice cracked. "This is the hardest moment of my life. I stand here, not only as a judge, but as a mother who lost her son to lies, a mother who has carried the weight of grief every day since." The room grew still, could hear the sound of people breathing, scratch of one last reporter's pen. She took a deep breath, her eyes locked on him. But today, justice will not fail you today. Lies will not win. Today, the truth will give you back what was stolen. The foster father muttered, "No, no." His voice sounded weak, broken. He sank back into his chair. The foster mother whispered, "Please don't take him away from us." But her words faded under the weight of the moment. The judge lifted her gavel again. Her voice was firm, but tears rolled freely down her cheeks. "This court rules in favor of the biological mother. The boy is hereby placed in her full custody. Effective immediately." The sound of the gavel striking wood echoed like a hammer breaking chains. The courtroom erupted, gasps, sobs, claps, whispers, all blending together. Reporters scribbled furiously. Jurors let out shaky breaths. People in the audience cried openly, some even applauding softly. The boy froze. He looked at the judge, at his mother, his lips trembling. "Does that mean I can go with you?" The judge stepped down from the bench. For the first time, she wasn't a judge, she was simply a mother. She walked toward him, her tears falling, and knelt so she was eye level with him. "Yes," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Yes, my son, you're coming home with me." The boy's face crumpled, and he threw himself into her arms. The courtroom gasped again, But this time it was filled with warmth, not shock. The mother held him tightly, her arms wrapping around him as though she would never let him go again. She buried her face in his hair, whispering through sobs, "I've missed you every day. I love you more than anything. I will never, ever let you go again." The boy clung to her, his small body shaking with relief and joy. "I love you, Mom. I knew you were real. I knew you were out there." The audience wiped their eyes. Even the bailiff cleared his throat and looked away, his eyes suspiciously wet. The foster parents sat broken. The mother sobbed quietly, rocking. In her chair, the father sat pale and still, staring blankly at the table in front of him. Their power was gone. Their control was shattered. They were left only with the silence of their own lies. The judge no longer only a judge, but a mother. Reunited with her son stood, holding his hand. She looked at the jurors, the lawyers, the audience, her face wet with tears but strong. "This court is adjourned," she said softly. The gavel struck one last time. The boy squeezed her hand. Together they walked out not as strangers, torn apart by lies, but as family, bound by truth, love, and justice. The sound of the final gavel strike still echoed in the boy's ears as he held his mother's hand tightly. For a moment, he was afraid to move, afraid it would all disappear, afraid he might wake up and find it was only a dream. But it wasn't a dream. It was real. The courtroom doors opened and light streamed inside. Together, they stepped forward, mother and son, walking into a new world. The crowd followed them with their eyes. Some clapped softly, some wiped their tears, and some whispered prayers. Reporters shouted questions, their cameras flashing, but for the boy and his mother, the noise didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was the hand they held, the connection they had finally found again. Outside the courthouse, the air felt different. Fresh, free. The boy blinked in the sunlight, still clutching the necklace. He looked up at his mother, his voice trembling. "So, we really get to go home?" His mother knelt down and brushed a tear from his cheek. "Yes, Michael. Home. Together." The word home felt strange to him. For so long, home had been a place of silence and lies. But now it meant something new, something true. They walked down the courthouse steps, each step heavier with emotion. Reporters swarmed around them, microphones shoved forward, voices overlapping. "Judge, how long were you searching for your son? Michael, how does it feel to finally be with your mother? What will happen to the foster parents?" But she didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her only answer was the way she held her son close. Her hand never letting go of his. The boy's lawyer stepped forward, blocking the cameras. "No more questions. This family deserves peace. Let them breathe." The crowd slowly began to part. People stepped aside, watching silently as the pair walked forward. Some strangers even smiled at the boy, nodding in quiet respect, as if they too understood the miracle that had happened. As they reached the car waiting by the curb, the boy stopped, turned back, looking up at the courthouse. His chest rose and fell quickly. His eyes filled again. His mother bent down. "What is it, son?" He swallowed hard. "That place. It used to scare me. But now it's where I found you." Her heart ached, and she hugged him tightly. "Yes, that building held our pain, but it also gave us back our truth. We'll never forget this day." They stepped into the car. The city outside passed in a blur, but inside the car, everything was still. The boy leaned against his mother, afraid to let go. She stroked his hair gently, whispering promises she meant with every beat of her heart. "I'll never leave you again. I'll never let anyone take you from me again. You are my son, always." The boy closed his eyes, listening to her heartbeat. For the first time in his life, it felt steady, safe. When they reached her home, the boy's breath caught. The house wasn't big. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm. There were flowers by the door, a welcome mat with the word hope and curtains that danced softly in the breeze. This is where you live?" he asked softly. "Yes," she said, smiling through tears. "And now it's where we live." He stepped inside slowly. The smell of fresh bread lingered in the air. The walls held pictures of her life friends, family, moments of laughter. But one wall was different. It was covered with pictures of him, baby photos, old birthday cards, newspaper clippings from the time she had begged for information about a missing child. His missing child. His hand touched one of the frames. His voice cracked. You kept all this?" She nodded. "Every memory I could hold on to. Every trace of you I could find. I promised myself that if I ever saw you again, I would show you that I never stopped loving you. Not even for one day." The boy's tears fell freely, but his lips curved into the smallest smile. For the first time, he felt wanted. For the first time, he felt seen. That night, as the stars lit the sky, the boy sat by the window in his new room. It was simple, just a bed, a desk, and shelves with a few books. But it felt like magic, because it was his. He looked at the necklace again. The heart-shaped locket had always been a mystery. But now he knew the truth. It was his connection. To her, to love. To home, his mother entered quietly carrying a blanket. Still awake, he nodded. "I don't want this day to end." She sat beside him, wrapping the blanket around his shoulders. "I know, my son, but tomorrow will be even brighter. Tomorrow we start our life together, a life of truth, a life of love." He leaned against her, his small voice whispering, "Promise me we'll never be apart again." She kissed his forehead. "I promise. No one will ever take you from me again." The boy closed his eyes, finally allowing himself to rest, for the first time in years. He slept without fear. For the first time, he dreamed of tomorrow and outside. The night sky shone brighter than ever, as if even the stars were celebrating the reunion of a boy and his mother, two souls torn apart by lies, but bound forever by love.